let me tell you a story. A dark story, a true story. Do you believe in witches? I mean real witches, not the kind of witches in Harry Potter. Nowadays there are people who say they are witches. Not evil, but good witches. White witches. White witches use herbs and plants to cure people of various ailments. No black magic or deals with the devil for them. Do you believe in the devil? If you are religious and you believe in God, then you must believe in the devil. Good versus evil. Okay. This story starts in Scotland many years ago. The year 1590, to be precise, when a woman named Agnes Sampson was accused of witchcraft. In those days, Scotland was a very paranoid society. Fire and brimstone was preached from the pulpits, and the devil and all his legions were imagined in every dark corner and in every flickering shadow from the candlelight and wood fires. Night was a lot darker then.
Agnes Sampson lived at Netherkeith, near Edinburgh. She was considered to have healing powers and acted as a midwife. In the spring of 1590, James VI of Scotland returned from Copenhagen after marrying Anne of Denmark, daughter of the King of Denmark and Norway. The voyage back from Denmark was beset by storms. In the following months a witch hunt began in Denmark, the Copenhagen witch trials, started by the Danish Admiral Peter Munk. One of its victims was Anna Coldings, who gave the names of 5 other women. The women confessed that they had been guilty of witchcraft in raising storms that threatened Anne of Denmark's voyage, and sent devils to climb up the keel of her and King James's ship. In September 1590, 2 women were burnt as witches at Kronborg for the crime, and James, furious at this attempt on his life, decided to set up his own witch hunt in Scotland. Politics certainly played a large part in James's fervor for witchcraft trials, as his ultimate ambition was to be King of England, as well as Scotland, and this image of being the Christian faith's Lord Protector would certainly have helped him to achieve that end. According to the News from Scotland, Agnes Sampson confessed to causing the storm that drowned Jane Kennedy on the 7th of September 1589, when ferry boats collided during a sudden storm on the 4th. She had made a charm by sinking a dead cat, to which her companions had attached parts of a dead man, into the sea near Leith. The same charm raised the storm and weather effects that threatened the king on his return voyage from Denmark in 1590. On the 27th of January she confessed that the devil had offered to help her and her children because she was a poor widow. By the autumn of 1590, Scotland was aflame with witch hunts, and many of those sent to trial were questioned by the king himself. Agnes Sampson was accused by Gillis Duncan and arrested along with others, and questioned regarding her role in the storm raising. She was put to torture and, no doubt, under duress, confessed to her part in the diabolical plot to kill the king, naming another 59 unfortunate women. Agnes Sampson was taken to the scaffold on Castle Hill, where she was garroted then burnt at the stake on the 28th of January 1591. Edinburgh Burgh Treasurer's accounts itemize the cost of Agnes Sampson's execution, giving the date of the purchases as the 16th of January 1591 and the cost as £6, 8 shillings and 10 pence. The societal climate of the day was domineeringly patriarchal, and thus it is of little surprise to discover that the vast majority of witchcraft charges in Scotland under the Witchcraft Act were given to women. These women usually came from a particular set of demographics. They were elderly, spinsters, midwives or widows with no male protection and very little money, and therefore were society's most vulnerable. It is important to note that Scotland had not always been fearful of witches. The country had a sizable population of herbalists, who were known as witches, but these people, usually women, were not feared amongst their communities. As I have said, quite the opposite, they were healers who sought to help their neighbors. The witch hunts in 17th century Scotland were sanctioned by the Witchcraft Act, which had made the practice of witchcraft a capital offence. Society at the time was strongly patriarchal, with women being generally oppressed. The usual victims of the hunts were female, and a commonly shared characteristic was a sharp tongue along with a lack of deference shown towards authority. The torture and degradation to which the victims were subjected prior to the trial itself were often so severe that a confession was seen to be the best option for the accused, and execution would come as a release. The normal procedure to identify a witch was to search for the devil's mark on the suspect's body. Even if one was not immediately visible, the inquisitors did not worry too much. They convinced themselves that the absence of such a mark was merely an oversight on the part of Satan. Inverkip is a small, unassuming village in the heart of Inverclyde, and within the historic county of Renfrewshire. Appearances are deceptive, however, as from 1640 to 1690, the village was a hotbed for a large number of witchcraft accusations. Almost all of those targeted were women. The two ministers of Inverkip were the Reverend John Hamilton and the Reverend Alexander Leslie, both of whom were known to be zealot persecutors of witches, and both actively fueled the dreadful religious fire which was to envelop the area. The next tests were often a combination of plunging pins into the witch's flesh and tying her fingers to her toes, throwing her into a pool of water and watching the results. Needless to say, the poor maltreated creature had little chance of survival either way. If she bled or screamed in agony when the pins were thrust in, she was reluctantly considered innocent, although by the time this conclusion had been reached she was frequently so ill and weak from shock and humiliation that the verdict meant very little. Likewise, if she drowned during the water test, the blessing of God was called on her soul and her worthy neighbors went off to hunt for someone else. One of the few men who was believed to be a witch was a local landowner named Alexander Dunrod. Old Dunrod was the last of the Lindsay family of Dunrod Castle. He was rumored to be involved with a number of witches in and around Inverkip, and even had the devil himself come to stay with him. Old Dunrod was a very unpopular man and openly despised by the locals. Legend has it that Dunrod fell penniless, and as a result became enamored with the black arts in the hope of restoring his fortunes. However, after successfully conjuring up the devil in an effort to enlist his assistance, the devil himself was of the same opinion as the locals, and many arguments ensued between Dunrod and his dark potential benefactor. Falling out with a normal business partner is one thing, but with the devil himself, as Dunrod was to find out, was an entirely different ballgame. He is supposed to have died in mysterious circumstances in the grounds of one of his tenants. Witch or no witch, he did not stand trial for the rumors which surrounded him, in all likelihood because he was male. All this is mere speculation, of course, but you must admit it makes a great story. The following poem sums up the local feeling to Old Dunrod. In Auld Kirk the witches ride thick, and in Dunrod they dwell. But the greatest loon, meaning witch, amang them all is Auld Dunrod himsel. Young Mary Lamont was perhaps the most famous of the Inverkip witches. By the time of Mary Lamont's trial, the prerequisites for putting a person accused of witchcraft to trial had become more rigorous, and the Privy Council had stated that a confession must be voluntary and not obtained under torture. In June 1661, the year before Mary appeared before the commission, the precondition was added that the accused must be of complete age, and by July 1662 had further added that the accused must not be subjected to pressure and must be of sound mind. Mary's trial was held in the locale and lasted for 1 day. At trial she freely admitted that she had become a witch at the age of 13 years, when under the influence of Catherine Scott she allegedly renounced her Christian faith, was baptized by the devil and renamed Klaus. She said that along with Jean King, Catty Scott, Janet Holm and sundry others she had met at the book gate of Ardgowan in the presence of the devil, who appeared to them on this occasion in the shape of a black man with cloven feet. They were directed to gather sand from the shore and scatter it about Yetts of Ardgowan, and about the minister's house. She was accused of shape-shifting into a cat and of stealing milk by means of magic. The milk theft involved drawing a tether made from the hair of many cows' tails over the mouth of a mug and speaking the words "In God's name, God send us milk, God send it, and meikle of it." Mary also confessed to dancing with others round the Keppel Stone, which is a mysterious standing stone in nearby Gurrock. This ancient megalith is steeped in superstition and was often visited by sailors and fishermen who would circle the stone 7 times while chanting to ensure favorable winds and a good catch. Newlyweds would also visit the stone in hopes of a successful marriage. They attempted to throw the stone into the sea, the intention being to sink ships sailing in the Firth of Clyde. Mary Lamont was burned at the stake in 1662, possibly outside the Auld Kirk of Inverkip. The Auld Kirk was on the site of the present old graveyard, at what is now the junction of Langhouse Road and Millhouse Road. This small church, known as Auld Kirk, served the entire Christian population between Kilmaughcolm and Largs for around 400 years. The existing derelict mausoleum of the Shaw Stewart stands on the site of the original church and incorporates some of its structure. Well, that's the story. A dark tale of puritanical religious frenzy and superstition which took the lives of so many innocent people. Of course, these witch hunts, which originated in Scotland, were not confined to Scotland alone. These mistaken beliefs spread like wildfire through the Christian world from Europe to the Americas, of which the most infamous being the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. Thousands of poor souls were executed in the most horrific ways possible, and all in the name of religion. Makes you think, doesn't it? Nowadays we may not have witch hunts, but we sure have its equivalents. Time for me to leave you now, but remember when I asked you earlier if you believed in the devil? I wonder.